Alright kids, in this activity we are going to go over the concepts in topic 10.3. You will need to open your book to pages 260 and 261. Pause the video, get yourself out some paper, and open up your book now. Okay, once again we're going to be talking about unit rates, but we're going to be talking about unit rates and how you can use a unit rate to solve a proportion. So let's take a look on page 260 in the Pearson Realize book, which is a pretty good book. It gives us a lot of nice information. And when we look at this, we can see that they are asking us, how can you use a unit rate to solve a proportion? Well, again, like always, they give us a situation and to help us understand this concept. And it tells us that a bicycle tour group travels 320 miles in 5 days. So right there, that looks like that's going to be a pretty important ratio. How far could they travel in 8 days if they maintain the same average speed? Well, in order to solve this problem, in order to find out how much they will travel in 8 days, we have to figure out what the unit rate is in order to solve the problem. Well, the unit rate is actually going to be determined based on this rate of 320 in 5 days. Now remember, they want to know, in order to figure out a unit rate, we want to know how many miles they travel in just 1 day. And then once we know that, we can certainly take that unit amount and multiply it by 8 in order to get 8 days. Okay? So let's take a look at some of the resources they've given us in the book that help explain it. Okay? Now, what they do is they tell you, okay, to first find a unit rate. Now, we know the group traveled 320 miles in 5 days. The unit rate tells how many average miles they traveled per day. So we're going to get a per day rate from this 320 in 5 days. In order to do that, we will have to divide the 320 by 5. When you divide 320 by 5, you get 64. So this gives us a unit rate of 64 miles per day. So the group traveled an average of 64 miles each day. Okay? So now we know, if we were to look back at our number line, we now know that they have been traveling from one unit is 64 miles. So now we know that this would be 64, this would be 64, this would be 64, this would be 64, and so if you multiply 5 times 64, you're going to get 320. So now that we know that they travel an average of 64 per 1 day, we can simply take the number 8 and multiply it by 64. So we should be able to take 64 and multiply it by 8 to figure out approximately how far they will travel in 8 days. So let's take a look at our resources again, and you can see that our book is showing us exactly what we were just talking about. Use the unit rate to find how far the group could travel in 8 days. So our unit rate is 64 miles in 1 day, so 1 unit is 64 miles. We're going to multiply 64 by 8, and we find that when you multiply 64 by 8, you can have 512. You get 512. So the group could travel 512 miles in 8 days, thanks to our unit rate of 64 miles per day. Okay? Multiplied by the 8 days. Alright? So now let's take a look at some problems in the book. Okay? Why don't you take a look at this video, at this problem, and see if you can solve it. Pause the video and see if you can answer this question. Alright, hopefully you took some time to solve the problem. And it tells us that elephants can charge at speeds of 7/10 of a kilometer a minute. Use a proportion to find this speed in kilometers per hour. So what we want to do is we want to set up a proportion. Now the answer, if you haven't figured it out, is 42 kilometers per hour. Okay? Now if we were going to solve this problem, we would want to set it up like this. Our initial ratio is 7/10 of a kilometer to 1 minute. So this is 7/10 of a kilometer to 1 minute. Okay? And what we want to do is we want to find out how many kilometers per hour. Well, we're working with minutes down here, so we know that we have to be working with minutes over here in order to create a proportion. So what we know that in 1 hour there are 60 minutes. So what we're going to work for is reaching from here to here with 60 as our factor. Okay? So if we multiply the lower term by 60, we have to multiply the upper term by 60. And if we do that, we can see that we have 60 multiplied by 7/10. 7 times 0 is 0. 7 times 6 is 42. We have a decimal in one of our factors, so it comes out one time, comes back in. So our answer is going to be 42 kilometers per hour. Okay, so 42 kilometers per hour, because this is going to equal 1 hour. 60 divided by 60 will give us the 1 hour, and so therefore we would have 42 per hour. Okay? Alright, see if you can solve this next problem related to cheetahs. Pause the video. Alright, let's take a look at what you came up with. Okay? A cheetah can chase after its prey at about 110 kilometers per hour. So 110 kilometers per hour. Use a proportion to calculate about how many kilometers a cheetah could run in 1 minute. Well, in this case, our answer is about 1 8/10 kilometers per hour. Okay, could run in a minute. Okay, so it'll travel about 1 8/10 kilometers in 1 minute. We come up with that by using proportions. And so what we want to do is take our original ratio of 110 kilometers per hour, but instead of writing the unit of 1 down there, we're going to change it over to minutes. So we're going to write it as 110 kilometers per 60 minutes. Okay? And now what we want to do is we want to find out how much a cheetah will run in 1 minute. So now we can create a proportion, and we want to go down to 1 for our minutes. And so we're going to have to divide by 60. And then if we divide our lower term by 60 to get our unit, we're going to divide our top term by 60. And what we will get is 1.8 approximately. Okay, approximately 108 kilometers. And we would say that it's 108 kilometers approximately because if you did the math and you divided 110 by 60, you would find that what you actually get is decimal 1 and 8.3 repeating. Okay? That's what you would actually get. So we're just going to round that to 1 8/10 because they want to know about. Okay? Alright. Let's take a look at a few other example problems. See if you can solve these problems on your own. Pause the video and see what you come up with. Alright, here we go. Let's take a look at number 23. The answer to number 23 is Martha's unit rate is 244 thousandths of a lap in 1 minute. And the way you get that is you simply set up a proportion. Here's one way that you could do it. You could take your 20 number of laps she does in 82 minutes. And we want to find out how far she can travel in just 1 minute, because we want a unit rate, okay, and this is in many minutes. So we're going to drop to 1 minute, so we're going to divide by 82, divide by 82, and if you did the math, you would find that you actually get 0.244, okay? And so that's how far she can travel in 1 minute. Okay, that much of a lap. Alright, so let's take a look at the next answer. Okay, our next answer is, what is Allison's unit rate? Well, Allison is 16 to 64. Okay, so if we check our answer, Allison can travel 25 hundredths of a lap in 1 minute. And you establish that by doing the same procedure for finding a proportion. You would simply take her 16 laps in 64 minutes, and you would need to divide, okay? And again, you can divide in the traditional sense of the algorithm, 16 divided by 64. Or you can set it up as a proportion and scale it, and you're still going to be dividing by 64. And so when you do that, you'll find out that, of course, you get a unit, a single unit, and you would then also find out that you would get 0 and 25 hundredths of a lap. Okay, so if you did all the math and you calculated it all out, you would see that you'd come out to that. Alright, so anyways, let's take a look at our last problem. Okay, and our last problem asks us about how many hours would it take Martha to run 44 laps. Well, the answer to this one is it would take her about 180.4 minutes, or 180 minutes, which would equal to about 3 hours. And you would solve this by setting up a proportion once again. And what we would do is we would simply take the easiest way of doing this would say, okay, we're going to do 20 laps in 82 minutes, and we want to figure out how much it will take to go 44 laps, okay, because this is laps and this is minutes. So what we have to ask ourselves is, how can we go to 20 to 44? Well, what we do is we say, well, we're going to have to multiply to take it up. So what do we multiply it by? Well, the way we figure that out is we could simply divide 44 by 20. And when we do that, we see it goes in there twice. That would be 20. Subtract, and you have a remainder of 4. Add a decimal point, and then put your decimal point up. Annex is 0. 20 into 40 will go 2 times, and of course that will terminate. So what we want to do is multiply by 2.2, and if we multiply 88 by 2 and 2/10, we will get 180 and 4/10. Okay, 180 and 4/10. So that tells us how many minutes we would get. And then if we take our minutes, because we want to find out hours, so we just simply take that 180, we're going to round it because they want about how many, and we're going to divide that by 60. So when we divide that by 60, 60 will go into 180 3 times. 3 times 0, 3 times 6 is 18. Subtract, and there you have your answer of about 3 hours. Okay? Hopefully this video has helped you understand proportions a little bit, and you can watch the Fox video and it will explain it to you as well. If you have any further questions, you can see your teacher.